So today I wanted to get started on the second skill or process that we're talking about. You know, if you remember, we had talked about three distinct processes to convert a clunker junk drum set into a world-class drum machine. So the first one was muffle as little as possible. The second was tune to fit the song, and the third was mic positions. So today we're going to be talking, it's actually in two parts. We're going to be doing part one. We're going to just focus on the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of drum tuning. Just kind of the things to look out for, you know, when are drum heads too old? What advantage do new heads give you? How to change a drum head, and just some basic tuning. Now, this stuff really takes some time to master, but my hope for you is that it'll get your feet wet, it'll give you a basic primer so that it's not so terrifying. And, you know, about anybody can do it if you're willing to at least try. Okay, so basically what you want is you need a drum key, and this is my drum key here. It's, I've actually covered it with orange tape so that it's a little bit easier to find. A lot of times these are just kind of floating around, and the orange helps me to find it easier. And then you'll need a drumstick. You really only need one drumstick and one drum key. Here is what the drum sounds like, and it's being recorded through this 414B ULS. So this is the drum mic, and I'm talking through a different mic here. So this is just for the drum here. Let's see what that sounds like. One thing that I noticed is that it really doesn't have a full overtone. You know, it just has kind of this weird ring to it. There's some sort of like stain here, and there's, you know, there's just some of the coating is pitting off. You can see kind of the wear here. It still has this texture towards the edge here, okay, but really this drum head is just shot. So let me just kind of see what I can do with this and see how much better I can make it sound. Kind of a worst case scenario, but it's a real life thing that you may face. Okay, I'm gonna try to tune it up and see what we get. And what I wanna do is I'm just going to go around and hit each one by, hit the drum by each lug, okay? Or tension rod. These are the lugs, these are the tension rods, and this is the rim. So hit it by each tension rod, detune it, and then immediately tune it back up. That's the note I'm hearing. Then I'll go across right here. Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. I don't know if we had any luck. Yeah, that already sounds better. I mean, just the difference between the two. This has a fuller sound to it. Typically, I might even go around another time, you know, just to really lock it in. But let's go to the bottom of the drum. See how that's doing. Same kind of process. You can see that, like, I kind of whip the pitch down. So I hit it. See that motion? It's basically, if this were 12 o'clock, I'm tuning it all the way down to 6 o'clock and then back. It's about how much you have to turn it. A lot of my students, they'll kind of get on it and say, like, you know, this kind of motion. That's not gonna do it. You really gotta involve the entire kind of range of that lug there. So almost take it down to where it just dies. See how it basically dies there? There it's dead. And then there's the fundamental that's still living, just barely holding on. And let's see what this sounds like. That's a totally different ring than what we started out with. That's probably a 3-second ring. I mean, that's ridiculous. But sometimes it's just taking and kind of fine-tuning around the drum and see what happens. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is to go around the drum and kind of experiment with how the top head affects the bottom head. Right now, let me just kind of play you the two together, and you can see the difference in pitch between the two. Same thing, but let's check the top. Yeah, so you can hear that the top head is lower than the bottom head. In some sense, you can say that the bottom head will control more so the pitch, and the top head will control like the feel of the drum. But you gotta understand that they both kind of work together to determine the pitch, and the drum itself is going to have a range that you're gonna find that it just won't go any higher or any lower, and it'll be unhappy, and you'll just kind of have to tweak it back. So that's what we'll try now is I'll go ahead and tweak it and see what the range is of this drum. Let's try going up with this drum. Here is the current pitch. What I'm gonna do is, we know that this sounds pretty good, okay? And I'm gonna take up the top head one step. And what I mean by one step is just basically this. That's it. Let me show you that again. Okay, let me take out the give so it's nice and taut. Ready? That's it. It's like basically between 2 o'clock, and we're going from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Okay? So we're gonna do that on every lug, on every tension rod. Just see what we get. So you can hear that with a higher tension, just like how we detune it to get rid of those overtones, when we tune it up, we actually add overtones. I don't know if I really like that, but let's keep going, just to see. Yeah, and I think that's way too high for where this drum likes to be right now. I mean, you might be able to pull that off with a fresh head, but right now it's just not happening. So basically I just take it 2 steps down. And I just go across the lug. And I just keep track where I started. With any luck, we'll be back where we started. Okay. Now let's obviously the top head didn't work out, so let's try the bottom head, because that can most of the time give us a pitch raise if we want to adjust the pitch. See what this sounds like. Okay, interesting. How about one more? Yeah, so 2 steps on the bottom head is a lot more favorable than 2 steps on the top, that's for sure. Let's do 3 steps on the bottom, see what we get. Yeah, it still has a very full tone to it. It is higher, and it does have more overtones, but you can hear it still has a nice full tone to it. Now, we've gone 3 steps here. Typically, if I go more than about 2 or 3 steps, I try to see what'll happen if I take up the other head in the same direction. Because a lot of times it's a ratio. So if this head is way out of whack from this one, they may be more happy if I adjust the top head. Yeah, that would be a great sound for like an 80s like huge tom fill with rototoms and everything. So that has a very kind of bright cherry kind of sound to it. So yeah, now let's take it back down and let's try it lower. Okay, so I have returned the tuning back down to the original pitch, and now I'm going to see what happens when we go lower. You know, it's just really important to get your hands dirty with this and just try it. You know, if you got a drum key, try it. The worst that can happen is you got to get it back to where you had it. So I want to try tuning it down. Let's say one step on each head. Okay, not bad. Let's see what happens when we go further. Okay. Now you can hear that there's starting to be this little growl that's starting to happen, and the drum is starting to lose its volume. That to me is a sign that the head is starting to get too low for what it's able to do. A brand new head could probably do it. You know, a new head can go down further than an old head can. It has that elasticity. But this old head, you know, it may be beyond its reach. Let's take it another step and see what happens. Yeah, that's definitely a different sound than what we originally had. It's a lot less projecting. That actually sounds better than what we had just a second ago. Let me take down the bottom head and see what we get. Yeah, so it looks like we found kind of a sweet spot for the drum. It is pretty low, and you'll notice that the projection is nowhere near what we had it originally before we started a couple pitches down on each head. When I was tuning, I noticed that one of these lugs was completely loose, and you can see I can just loosen it by hand. It's really bizarre, and that kind of stuff happens because other lugs will be pitched, and then you'll have one that's totally loose. And you know, if that happens, it probably means that one is just too loose. Ultimately, you want to make sure that that doesn't rattle. If the drum sounds good, just go with it. I mean, sometimes you just don't have the time to mess around with it and figure out why that one lug is looser, but if it sounds good, don't worry about it. Let's see how much further we can take this and just kind of show you an example of something that's undertuned. So yeah, you can hear that it was only one step away from having that nasty growl to it. And I mean, there might be a time you might really want that. You know, it could be really cool to have like a really papery, like layered drum sound and like record 5 of you and all have like this tribal thing going. But you know, if it were like a drum fill, that would just sound like kind of a dud drum, you know? Okay, so once you have all the lugs loose, you want to make sure that they all are loose, because when you pick this thing up, it's going to be a handful. Once you have everything done, you can just take off the rim. So yeah, there I got hung up, but you can always, as long as you've loosened everything, you got it. I typically check to just get all of the dust and stuff out of it. And then you have the drum head. And typically when this is mounted, you actually see this part of the drum head. like here in the bottom, you can actually see it. See right here, we can actually see that part of the drum head. And that's called the hoop. And just comes right off. This plastic actually forms and kind of molds itself to the shape of the bearing edge, which is this edge here. And this is kind of like the bridge of a guitar. You know, this is the contact point of the body to the vibrating element of that instrument. And so if this is dinged up, which it can happen, or if it's unround or any of that nature, it can affect the way that the drum is able to be tuned, able to vibrate. So it can affect the sound. If you're having a lot of problems with the drum, you might want to check out the bearing edge. Just kind of feel around it. See if it's fairly sharp and smooth. This drum's bearing edge is about as sharp as like a head of a pin, okay? It's not sharp enough to cut me. It's not as sharp as like a very clean cut piece of wood, but it definitely is a fine edge. Then when you have your new head, what I like to do is center it. I guess I didn't for this, but I like to look at this breather hole here and then take the logo and then center it right over this hole, okay? So now it goes like that. And if I ever take it off, I know right where the head goes. For this drum, I guess in 2006 I wasn't following that standard of changing heads, so I actually had it over this part, the hoop, the support suspension system. So I'm going to return it to that because that's how it was. The collar is fitted to the drum. And then from there, I'll just put everything back on. It's really not a hard procedure at all. You know, out of our 3 parts of this series, you know, our first part was muffling as little as possible, tune your drums to fit the song, and microphone placement. Well, we are on the second part of the series, tuning your drums. This one was more about the mechanics, and I hope to see you in the next one, which is about making decisions about the specific tones, and to make sure that those tones will fit with your music. So I'll see you in the next video.